We are delighted to have you here with us this morning. It is July. It is nearly the end of term. Now, when I was leading a toddler group, which I did for nearly 12 years, this was a bit of an in-between time. What I noticed, I don't know if it's what you noticed, is that sometimes attendance would drop off. So I would often have 40 or 50 families during the winter and the spring. But in the summer, it got a bit more hit and miss as young families made the most of schools not being finished yet, and they go on holiday or they go out for the day if it's better weather. And what I was trying to do was end well and end strong and end together. So what we want to help you do today is navigate this time. How can we manage this time at the end of term? How can we end well and end strong? How can we say goodbye to the children that are leaving us? And then we also want you to help you think ahead to September, because as I was ending, I was also thinking with my team about, well, what might September look like? What changes might we need to put into place as we welcome new families in September? So for ending well, starting strong. Rachel, I'm going to hand over to Rachel now, because she's going to encourage us and inspire us with the statistics that we often start with, because they remind us how massively important to God's mission what you all do with young families is. Rachel, over to you.
Thanks, Sammy. Good morning, all. Lovely to be with you. And again, just hugely grateful to you at this busy time of year for carving out the time to join with myself and Sammy. We love working in partnership between the Evangelical Alliance, where I serve as head of mission, and with Sammy and the team from Hope Together. And as Sammy said, I'd love to just take a few minutes of your time to refresh our memories as to why we do what we do against the big cultural and church and community backdrop that we find ourselves in this particular season. So stick with me whilst we share a screen on just a few slides, if that's okay. Many of you, I recognise some of your faces. Thank you for you've been with us over this journey of the last 3 and a bit years or so now, since we launched the Talking Toddlers research, and have grown this network, because we so are for you and with you. As Sammy said, background in lots of children and youth ministry, myself too, 20 years of youth ministry and 9 years of running Messy Church and so on, and having had toddlers of my own. We know and we see and we grapple with, don't we, some of the challenges, the realities, but also the opportunities that brings. So let me take us back a little bit, back to May 2020, just into the heart of the pandemic. You might recall that we launched this Talking Toddlers research, and hope that some of you who've journeyed with us, you might agree that actually even during COVID, the time online when our churches were shut and yet our families needed us probably more than ever, we've been really proactive as a network with you and standing together, haven't we, to just serve the families that we stand alongside week to week. And this is part of the reason why, because through the Talking Toddlers research, as we can see from this first slide, one of the headlines that came out told us that 74% of all families with children under the age of 5, not just our church families, but 74% of all families said in our research that they have contact with a church-based toddler group. I don't know about you, but I love this stat because it shows us that actually, if you look at our church communities and our ministries, I would ask any church leader, is there a bigger mission field actually where 74% of people come together? This shows us, doesn't it? It's huge, it's influential, and we need to really invest in this area of children and toddlers. The next slide shows us this, that not only 74% connect, but actually 86% of families who are involved in a church-based toddler group come really regularly. And so, as we know, as you all know, not only do we engage, have time with and invest our time and energy with the little ones, but of course it's so holistic a ministry, isn't it? We get the carers, the parents, the grandparents, the childminders, and so on and so forth. And so what that encourages us is actually, as we are distinctively Christian in the mix of that, not only are we investing in the life of the children, but as this next slide shows us, is we actually get the whole family. 55% of people in our research told us that if they were the non-Christian parent, or indeed others coming with their children, they told us that actually being a part of a church-based toddler group with that distinctive Christianness that they expected to see, because they're in our buildings, they expect to hear about Jesus, the Bible, and so on. 55% of people said that their own faith had been challenged or changed as a result of being part of our groups. Isn't that exciting? I think that's phenomenal, that actually we know the opportunities that are in front of us and it really has an impact. The next slide, Anna, if you could flick that up for us, please, tells us this, that actually, like we said, we see the whole family, but we know, and I myself became a Christian at the age of 7, having been through toddler groups, church groups, and actually became a Christian at a church-based holiday group. But 40% of people in our research said that actually they would look back and recall that they would say practicing Christians now in their older years, they became a Christian or had that journey of faith exploration under the age of 5. So again, hopefully that just affirms us at this, busy time of year, that this is why we do what we do, because we're investing not just in the children, the young people, but actually those whole families. And it really has an impact, doesn't it? And we need to stay strong right to the bitter end, and then look at what the summer opportunities will bring about too. Let me just take us back a bit more big picture to another piece of research where I'm just going to flag up 2 or 3 things for you. Some of you might be familiar with the Talking Jesus research, which ourselves at the EA, along with Hope Together and 4 other partners, launched at the end of April last year. And this research just shares with us today a little bit of, again, where the big picture opportunities were. This research mapped the state of faith and the state of evangelism across the UK. It told us loads of things, that 1 in 3 people, for example, are open to exploring faith and hearing more from the practicing Christians that they know. But we asked this question of our practicing Christians in the research: if you were to look back and explore or tell us how you came to faith, what was particularly influential within that? And as you could see, we've picked out just a few of the stats that I'll share with you over just this next few seconds, but there's loads in the research. But what really encourages us today is, as you can see here, 34% of the 4,000 Christians across the UK and non-Christians within that number, 34% of people said that actually it was really influential in their faith journey that they grew up in a Christian family. Many of us work with people who are on the fringe, who are exploring faith, but also are Christians. Again, it shows again, doesn't it, the importance of investing in families and in the young. Many other encouraging stats here. As you can see, people come to faith by Googling. 26% of people told us that they'd go to Google first to explore faith. But we also heard that, as you can see here, 24% of people said the Bible was influential, attending a Sunday school, conversations with Christian in their midst, and so on and so forth. If we can go to the next slide though, please, Anna. This slide is a great reminder again, why do we do what we do? Because again, when we look at practicing Christians today, they would say that actually it was in their faith journey of their very young years that was really influential. 33% of people, as you can see in our research, said that they came to faith, they believe, from birth. Even that opens up a whole raft of discipleship questions, doesn't it? What do people know and think about making a decision or coming to faith? So therein lies lots of conversations. But as you can see here, from 0 to 18, the vast majority of people said that they were on that faith journey, asking the big questions, even from their very young age into their teenage years. The good news is, as we look at this graph, is people come to faith at all ages. Isn't God good? His spirit and powerfully at work today across all ages. But this focuses our mind to see how many people would say that they come to faith at a young age. So it shows us that the opportunities are there. The next slide shows us this, that 53% of people, non-Christians, said that they know a practicing Christian. That's good news. It's nowhere near where we'd like it to be, but actually the alert around this for us as toddler group leaders or as people involved in ministry as well, the big alert here is that actually mapping this against the 2015 Talking Jesus research, so 8 years ago now, this was actually 68%. So there's been a significant drop there. People don't always know us, which again just flags the importance again of the ministries that we're a part of in our toddler groups. We make ourselves known of people who love them, who love their children, who are investing, but also love Jesus too. Because as I said earlier, 1 in 3 people have told us they're really open to hearing of the good news that, as we know, is transformative still today. And lastly, let me share this with you. When we asked the 4,000 people who were surveyed in this research from across all UK, across ethnicity, across diversity, gender, and so on, we asked, if you were to be asking one question at this point in time, what would it be? Well, there were lots of things. What will make me happy? What happens when you die? But the top question was this one. We found that across the UK, people were asking this question: will everything be okay? Isn't that fascinating that the people that you're engaging with, that I'm engaging with, actually the biggest question on their lips, and I certainly see this resounded amongst my peers, my friends, the families that I know, is against the backdrop of the roller coaster of COVID, of the threat of war, of the death of the Queen, the cost of living crisis. People are asking, will everything be okay? So as I hand back to Sammy, I just flag that as there's loads in this research. It looks like this. If you want a printed copy, there's lots in the Talking Jesus research, which should really inform us and encourage us. But actually, as we think about this reality of people asking, will everything be okay? Therein, within the context of our groups, right going into the summertime and looking to the new term, gives us golden opportunities to be speaking with love and care and passion, journeying alongside and great relationships and friendships to helping them answer that question, to point to the light and truth of the gospel good news in the midst of all the fun stuff that we do with them. So will everything be okay? Maybe not, but we know that we have hope in Jesus who journeys with us in all things. So I hope that's encouraged you, given you a little snapshot. All of the Talking Toddlers research is on both the EA and the Hope Together websites if you want to know more. TalkingJesus.org is where the rest of this research is, but hopefully that paints the big picture as we hone in a bit more today. Sammy, back to you.
Thank you, Rachel. So, two take homes from that for us now. One, toddler groups are massively important. You are very important people because young families are probably the biggest missional opportunity that the church has. Two, the Talking Jesus research, the fourth most popular way people come to faith is through a life event, a significant life event. So as we think about the end of term, how can we help our families put markers down and feel that they are connected to something? How can we help them mark this time? That's what we're going to do this morning. We have two speakers with us. We have Becky May from the resources cupboard. She's going to open her cupboard and share lots of resources that will help us end well and start strong. And then we have Caroline Montgomery from St Stephen's, Twickenham, who is a refresh pioneer. She's pioneering a new approach to mission with young families. But first I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to hand back to Rachel, because you're going to talk to each other in some breakout rooms. So Father God, thank you for every single person here this morning and everyone who wanted to be here but can't, often because they are doing the kingdom work of running a toddler group. Father, I pray that you would encourage, inspire and equip us this morning. And I pray that into the summer, you would inspire and refresh us, ready for all that you are already preparing for us to step into in September. Would you help us navigate this season of ending well and also looking ahead to September and wanting to start strong? Thank you that you go ahead of us. Thank you that where you call, you equip. And we claim that for every single person watching this morning or online later on. Amen. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Sammy. So one of the things we love to do in these Talking Toddlers sessions is to not only bring in some amazing speakers, but also, as Sammy said, to give us all the chance to just relate and chat and share good ideas with each other. So we're going to kickstart that now, just with about 5-10 minutes or so in groups. And please do join in if you're able to. There'll just be small groups. But what we'd love you to do is just introduce yourselves, say hello, who you are, where you're based. And just really share with each other, how are you feeling at this time of the year? As we look for these last few weeks before the summer, how do you finish off? What might you be doing to kind of finish the year well, be planning ahead to the summer? But any top tips, ideas, creative thoughts, be great for you to discuss. If, as always, it'd be brilliant if you could go into your groups and maybe one person could volunteer to just take a few little notes and put some bullet points in the chat for us. That would enable us to be able to share those ideas across you all. So if that's okay, Anna is very kindly going to drop us into our group, share those thoughts and ideas, and we'll come back together in just a few moments. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a great opportunity just then to be sharing with each other in your groups some of either the encouragements or the challenges, the top tips for how you finish well or planning ahead. Certainly in the group that I found myself in, we had lovely opportunity to speak, particularly with Jane, lovely Jane who's on our screens from Tame, and she was really inspiring us talking about their group, which is called Jigsaw, and how they very intentionally do not only the Tuesday mornings, which is called Jigsaw. That's their toddler group, but they do Jigsaw Sundays. And we ended up talking about how actually in that transitional space where you can invite people from your toddler group into a Sunday afternoon space, that is, to then be more inclusive of the whole family, getting the dads or the grandparents along and so on. And we talked a little bit about that, sort of finishing the term with those extra activities right to the end there, which many of you might have shared as well. I asked the question, what do you do for those families who've got little ones moving on? And we just shared some of the emotion of actually when people, it's great to celebrate children, isn't it, as they maybe start reception, go on to school and so on, but actually how much we miss them because we've journeyed with them in those lifelines that are toddler groups. And as Sammy said, who we also found ourselves in the same group, Sammy said, ask those parents to join your team, which is a great idea, isn't it, as those transitions happen. But hopefully you had some great conversations too. Please do continue to put any tidbits or top tips in the chat as we move on. But great for us to get acquainted. I'm going to hand over to Sammy now, who's going to introduce our first speaker. Thanks, Sammy.
I love the hive mind here. We've already in the chat got fun day Sundays. We've got ideas for the summer holidays, picnics and cafe spaces. Somebody's mentioned a bubble blessing. That's what I used to do, and I was the one in tears by the end of it. But I have our first guest speaker to introduce you to now. And if you're a bit weary and tired at the end of term and that kind of the brain isn't sparking creative ideas, not as well as it normally does because it's tired, then Becky is going to help us. So Becky has been a primary school teacher. She's been involved with children's and youth activities for longer than she can remember. She's done messy church, she's done toddler groups, and she's now one of the founders of something called the Resources Cupboard, which seeks to equip churches, particularly smaller and medium-sized churches, to make young disciples and take those families on an adventure of faith. And yes, when she's not doing all of that, there is even spare time for her own family adventures and craft. So as we think about resourcing the end of term and the start of term, Becky, can you open your resources cupboard for us now and give us some of your top tips? Thank you, lovely.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Sammy. I have to say, I think God has a good sense of humour, and it's only just struck me this morning. The room that I'm in it's mostly my husband's office because he spends a lot more time on Zoom than I do. But this very room is where I did an awful lot of youth work. This was the youth group room, and we got the chance to redecorate it and turn it into an office, which sounds like, oh my goodness, what a shame, no youth group. But no, it's not like that at all. Just a really funny turnaround of God doing in our lives. So I want to just share very briefly a little bit of my story and then share hopefully a whole lot of ideas and inspiration with you. And please do keep putting your comments in the chat. I'm loving seeing those pop up. They're really, really helpful. So I don't know how you got into toddler ministry. I managed to avoid the toddler group for a lovely, lovely long time. I was terrified of the under fives. And Anna, if you want to share the first slide, this probably to me evokes how I felt about the early years. If you've ever seen Toy Story 3, you will be familiar with the toys' trip to Sunnyside Daycare when they do not wish to join the Caterpillar Room. Caterpillar Room is terrifying, and I thought toddlers were like that. So I trained as a primary school teacher, and I even managed to my final teaching practice, I was in a middle school. That's what we had here at the time, and the school I was in went into special measures while I was there, and I was offered the opportunity to go and finish my teacher training in an early year setting, and I said no, thank you very much, I will see out my teacher training in a school in special measures. They terrified me, and then I had my own children, and I couldn't escape any longer because suddenly you've got this baby in front of you. I love babies, don't get me wrong. I love babies. I love my babies. But I thought, I've got to get a handle on this. I've got to know what I'm doing. So I remember sitting with my baby son on my lap, and our minister came round, and I said, I really want to get back into doing youth ministry. And he said, well, maybe you could just start a toddler group. And I think I laughed him out of the room. But over the next few years, I went on a journey of going to toddler groups with my own children, and then taking up the reins of leading our toddler group, not reluctantly, but actually really passionately, because I totally believe that they are the most incredible place and the most special place. And today we're talking about ending well and starting strong. And I think if you're talking about starting a family's faith journey, there is no better place to start than in the toddler group. So there's my confession. I hope you won't hold it against me and you'll let me stay. I'm no longer scared of, I might be scared of caterpillar room. That still looked pretty scary to me, but I'm no longer fearful of toddler groups. Okay, if we pop up the next slide, Anna, thank you. So as Sammy said, I launched a charity called the Resources Cupboard 2 years ago, and I felt it was a name that God had given to us. And he told me, God gave me this message, and it was all about Lucy in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And if you remember, she opens the wardrobe and she goes in and she goes on this incredible journey, and she has no idea what she's going to experience as she goes into that cupboard, effectively the wardrobe. And I felt that God was saying to us, that's what the Resources Cupboard is going to be. It's not about tidy shelves. You might like our color-coded bookshelves behind me. There's another story right there. You might like organized resources, but what God was saying is it's going to be a place where we resource churches, we resource people, and we go on a journey with churches and we help them figure out their next steps. So some of what we do is to flag up resources. We do a lot of signposting to what's helpful for people in different contexts, a bit like today, but also walking people through a journey of how are we going to reach children, young people and families, and how are we going to disciple them within our context. So that's a little bit about where I'm coming from. Okay, so our next slide, Anna, and this is what we're going to be talking about this morning. Ending well is the main focus for what I'm talking about. We'll touch on starting as well, but I think there's more room for discussion with that later on. 4 things that I'd like us to talk about. The end of the year, end of an era. We've already talked about some of the emotions at the end of toddler group. The fact that it is summer, even if it doesn't really look like it, I can now see a little bit of blue sky outside, and what it means to move on and up. And it might well be that actually you're already very well entrenched in your plans for this term, and you're all sorted. That's fantastic. Go ahead. You might want to make some notes and come back to some of these things next year. They might be more timely for then, or you might be able to adapt some of your plans for this term. Okay, so if we start with end of the year, and our next slide, Anna, thank you. I wonder if you're feeling a little bit like this hippo. We're nearly there. At my current reckoning, we are 2 weeks, 1 day, and approximately 5 hours from the end of term for me. I don't know where you're at in your end of term. You may well be counting down. I've spoken to a few children's leaders. They were planning their special events over the next few weeks, and one of them just said, oh, do you know what? I get to this time of the year and I just don't have the ideas. I'm out of ideas. I'm done. I'm spent. And there can be a sense in all of us that we just get really tired. And I think it's important that we recognize that when we think about how we mark the end of the term, how we mark the end of the year, how we mark the end of this season in children's lives. But I also think it's really important that we do end it well, that we don't fizzle out. And it can feel sometimes, can't it? As Sammy's already said, some of our families go away on holiday. We may already have found our numbers petering down. We can feel like we're fizzling, and we need to just end it really, really well. So here's a couple of thoughts for you. It might well be that you don't go to the very, very end of term, that actually you end your summer term earlier than that. We're ending the week before the penultimate week of term because a lot of our families are engaged in school activities in the last week of term, and they just said, you know what, let's take the pressure off. Let's just end 1 week early. But how can we do that? It might be that you get to go on a trip. I know farms are a fabulous place where lots of people go on trips, aren't there? That might be something you're able to do. In our context, a lot of our parents don't have access to cars within the week, and that's not an option for them. So instead of doing that, we have a teddy bears picnic on our last week of term. We have toddler group as usual. Everybody brings along their picnic, and we end with teddy bears picnic. And throughout lockdown, we did virtual picnics where everybody went off on their own to different places, had their picnic, and then sent us their photos so we could see each other where they'd taken their teddy bear and had their picnic. But having a really good marking at the end of the year, something special, but also balancing that against the needs of your team, against your own needs, against the needs of families who are juggling all the school special things and requirements, and make this costume and add this donation and whatever it is. just hold those two things in balance and mark the end of the year well. The other thing I just say at this point, I will come back to this, is make sure in the next few weeks that whatever data you've got for your families, you've picked up permission to share other news from your church with them, because that will prove really valuable in the family's ongoing journey. So if you've only got permission to share news about toddler group and your families are about to leave, you want to make sure that you've got those permissions in place already. Good old GDPR. Okay, so our next slide. Please, thank you. There we go. So for some, it's not just the end of the year, it is the end of an era. I remember when my eldest child, who's now 10, was starting school, I was absolutely heartbroken. It felt like the end of my life, not just the end of an era. I'd had these 5, not always glorious, but they felt pretty glorious in that moment, years at home with him. And suddenly he was off to big bad school, is how it felt. And my life would be over and I wouldn't get to do all the things that I'd done with him. And I think we have to realise that a lot of our parents do carry that, don't they, as a burden almost, that it's a change of season. It's a change of life pace. Some children, some families, a child starting school may mark a parent's change of work pattern. Sometimes it's the first child going off to school. Sometimes it's the last child going off to school. Sometimes it's a grandchild who's had this child, you know, in their care regularly, and they're not going to see them as often. So we have to recognise some of the emotions that involves, and how do we support our families in that? I think it's really important that we mark it and we celebrate it. And I know there's been some moves for toddler graduations or nursery graduations, and there's been some backlash against this American idea that we don't want over here, thank you very much, graduating from preschool. But this is something some people do, they graduate from their toddler group. However we choose to do it, it's important that we mark that moment and we celebrate with the child. You have reached this stage and this is so exciting, there's so much more ahead of you. And mum, I'm here and I've got a packet of tissues and it's going to be okay. Your life will continue, all will be well. So here are a few resources just to flag up to you very briefly. It's Your Next Step is my favourite go-to. We usually give this one to our children who are starting school. The PENS one, I believe, is now out of print. You might still manage to find a few copies in your local Christian bookshop. Give them a call. And also some children, it's not that they're starting school, but they're off to nursery and we just won't see them again because their nursery hours have changed. And we've just picked up this lovely book, Wherever You Go, I Want You to Know, which is far more explicitly Christian in its content. There's a board book version of that one, and there's also a colouring book version of that. And it's a nice blessing of family as they go off. Story. Fabulous. If we pop on to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so for all of our families and for all of our team, it is summer. It is the summer break. And how we feel about the summer break, what we experience of that will be different depending on, again, on our family's context. So for some of our families, it will be caught up in having older siblings at home and doing lots and lots of activities together. For some of our new families, suddenly all of their activities will stop and drop and there will be nothing going on over the summer and they'll feel quite vulnerable. For some families, it's a time of going out and doing great big family days out on holidays. And for others, they're not sure how they're going to feed their children for the whole time. And so the families that you're working in, you'll just need to be aware of the context there. It's also summer for your team, and taking a break is really, really important, giving yourselves a chance to refresh and not burning yourselves into the ground like our hippo in slide 1. But actually being able to come back in September strong is a really good thing to do. So it might be that one thing we used to do, we would have a regular team running our toddler group throughout the term time when my children were in the toddler group. And then in the summer holidays, a few of us families would say, do you know what, we're going to run it just for 4 weeks. Our regular team went off and had a break. We then ran it. So it might be that you could have a relief team in place and do something over the summer for your toddlers. It might be that you've already got a holiday club or family events going on in your church calendar that other people are involved in running, that you can make a point of welcoming your toddler group families too and continuing the contact that way. One thing we did, bedtime story. So a couple of summers ago, we would meet on a Friday evening down by the lake in our village and we'd do bedtime story with milk and biscuits And that was a lovely one for not just for our toddlers, but for older siblings as well. So it might be that there are other simple things you can do that change the pace, that are life-giving and not draining. Brilliant, thank you. If we have the next slide. Thank you. Okay. Lastly, we have moving on up. So I am absolutely a believer that the toddler group is the best place to begin a family's journey of faith. Some of the things that Rachel shared from the statistics earlier about families finding faith together, a lot of my research over the last couple of years has really focused on this, that actually something really special happens in toddler group. Parents are really open to exploring some of life's big questions when they've suddenly got a new life in their hands. That's a really significant moment in that family's life. And for a child to begin life in a Christian context just by coming to a weekly toddler group and hearing about Jesus every week of their lives, that's incredible. So these are really, really exciting and important moments. But if it's the first step, then it's not the last step. We want it to be a step on a journey of discovering faith and of discipleship for that family. The point here, we've talked already about inviting people to other events, and we need to bear in mind this is not about getting them into church on Sunday morning just to fill our pews. This isn't that exercise. This is about helping families to discover Jesus, to meet Jesus, and to journey in faith. And ultimately, we hope to become part of our wider church family as they become part of us finding faith together. So how do we move on with them? I think it might well be that you had activities running before COVID that you haven't picked up, and so perhaps a lot of churches have started with their toddler group and they've got that going and it's strong now, and then you're perhaps thinking about, well, what do we go on to? Or perhaps it is that actually you've already got all those things in place brilliantly. You might well have a messy church. Are you inviting your families to messy church? We've got a few wild churches starting around. So young families have been invited to join Wild Church and to become part of an expression of discovering faith together as a family. I think the old model perhaps we had before was you come to toddler group and then we invite you to our children's group and we kind of take the children away from the parents. So here, don't worry, we'll carry on teaching them about Jesus. You go home for an hour on your own. And I think it's much more helpful if we think about how as a family can we support you to continue discovering faith together. Another thing you might want to think about is introducing your children now in the next few weeks to people they might meet from your church in the next season of their life. Does your vicar go into school and do an assembly on a week? Do you have an open the book team? How can you introduce them and say, do you know what, you're going to meet these people and they care about you as well. They're going to talk to you about Jesus, making that transition more seamless. And just to really push home the point, make sure you've got permission to share information with them about upcoming events so that you can keep inviting them to things. Okay, last slide, Anna, thank you. Here we go, just very briefly, this is my contact details. If you want anything else sharing with you, any other ideas, if you've got specific questions about something that you're doing over the next few weeks or about something you're thinking about in September, you can get in touch by all means. And just to flag up to you that there is a Grove booklet coming out very soon. It should have been out, and I'm sorry that I don't have a pretty picture to show you this morning, called Start at the Very Beginning, which is all about the idea that we start a family's faith journey in the toddler group. We celebrate what the toddler group does, and then where can we go on from that. So I hope that's been helpful, some ideas and thoughts, and just carry on the journey, just keep going. Brilliant.
Thank you, Becky. That was amazing and inspiring and definitely resourcing. One of the things that is distinctive about both Becky and Caroline, who are with us this morning, is that they will hold your hand on this journey. So do go and check out Becky's website. But one of the particular things that the Resources Cupboard offer is to chat with you about your church, your context, and to work with you, kind of, you know, holding your hand, bit of coaching. And Caroline is the same. So Caroline is from St. Stephen's Church in Twickenham, and she is pioneering, she's breaking new ground and starting something new. Okay, so just park and pause what Becky was saying for a minute. And this is the kind of, you know, are you thinking of refreshing, reviewing your toddler group structure for September? Do you sense that God is calling you to shake things up a bit and try something new? If you are, Caroline might be able to help. So this is a completely different approach. It's not a toddler group, but it is an approach that's mission to, with and for young families. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline. She's going to talk to you about Refresh, and then you'll get the time to go into your breakout rooms again and kind of process all that you've heard, and then we'll chat. Okay, Caroline, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. It's really nice to see you. Yeah, the group that we run is called Refresh, and basically it aims to refresh the adults that are bringing the children. It aims to refresh them physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I started it back in 2011 because I was running a more normal toddler group, which was brilliant. But I just sensed God nudging me to say that he wanted to meet the adults in that space, that we're very good at connecting with the children. We're very good at doing Bible stories for the children and songs for the children, which is fantastic. And as we've seen from all the research, it really is brilliant. But I just felt like God say, well, I want to meet those adults. How can you, introduce me to them? And I think, they all come into our building. We're not invading their space. They're choosing to come to us and what we put on. And so I spent some time praying and thinking about, well, how can we actually be more intentional at meeting with the adults and giving them something of God, introducing them to Jesus, showing them something of his love for them. So yeah, I started it back in 2011 and we set it up. So we have lovely toys for the children. So it's definitely still a toddler friendly space. But we also set up like a little cafe area. Now we've got loads of space, so we can do that in a slightly separate part of church. But at the beginning, actually, we did it all in one space because we weren't sure how many people would come. But we have a specific sort of cafe space with some tables and chairs, adult-sized tables and chairs, so the adults feel like it's a place they can relax and feel like it's their morning. And then the toys, we have lots of different toy areas on mats, but we don't have any toys with big wheels. So basically I'm a bit strict on that, so they can't charge around because we don't want the morning to be the children going wild. We want the morning to be that the children have a lovely time playing with the toys, but actually also the adults have a slightly calmer morning. And then every week we do a little thought for the day during the morning, which is definitely Christian. It's definitely something about God's love for them. It's relevant, it's accessible, it's really short and no jargon, but it's aimed at the adults. It's not a Bible story for the children. The children are all there listening as well, but the actual thought for the day is to connect the adults and show them something of Jesus. So I might interview another team member, or I might ask someone if what their favorite verse from the Bible is and why, and what God has done for them, what's different in their lives now that they're a Christian. Or we talk about how God is with us in the different seasons, like we were just saying, when children move on to school. That's one thing for the children to cope with, and it's another thing for us as the adults to cope with, and knowing that God is with us in all of that. And the culture of our morning is such that everybody knows that's a key part of our morning and everybody joins in. So I have a microphone. I don't think we did at the beginning when we were a smaller group, but we sort of need one now because we're so busy. And we gather everyone together, and I sort of say, well, this is the time of our morning when we hope that you're actually going to feel refreshed spiritually now, so please find somewhere to sit with your children, pause your conversations. And then we have a little 2-minute countdown that shows on the screen, and there's music, and then we start with we do a little thought. And it's incredible how many people stay tuned in for that. Most of our families that come are not Christian and nothing to do with church. We have now, because it's grown, we have about 65 or 70 families each session. And I'd say only 2 or 3 of those are church families. So that, it's masses of people from the community. We don't even actually advertise. It's spread by word of mouth from non-Christian to other non-Christians saying, oh, come, this is our favourite group because we feel like we're noticed and connected with as adults. So that's what it's sort of about. And we've seen amazing fruit from it, actually. We've seen lots, obviously not all the families, sadly, but a lot of our families have started coming to church. We've had lots of people become Christians through their first connection was with Refresh, and then we've continued to connect with them, or they've started coming to church. And some of our current team are ones that were non-Christians coming, and then they've become Christians, and now they're on team as part of Refresh. And the other thing that's been a real joy is that oh, sorry, there's somebody in the waiting room. I've just admitted them. Hope that was okay. We don't struggle with getting enough team, and I've thought about why that is, and I think it's partly because we can see the fruit of what we're doing, and we're investing. Obviously, we've got all the lovely little children there, and we all enjoy having those around, but we're making connections with the adults and getting to know them and talking to them about our relationship with God in a very gentle way. But because that's the normal culture of the morning, they seem to be fine with it. And we always offer to pray for people. At the end of our little thought for the day bit, I will say, well, thank you for listening, and we believe God does answer our prayers. So if you have anything you'd like us to pray for you about, please do come and ask one of the team, and we can pray for you. You don't have to give us any details, but we will pray, and we'll see what God does. And it's amazing how many people come and ask us to pray for them. And what we do now is we don't take them off into a separate space and do it all in a sort of private secret way or whatever. We tend to stand next to them and pray for them, and if I know them well, I might say, oh, can I just put my hand on your shoulder? But mostly I don't, actually, and we'll just stand with them and I'll just say a 30-second prayer. And so other people are used to seeing members of the team praying for somebody. It's normalized it, so it's not like, oh gosh, look what's happening there. It's just something that they accept. And there was a question, how many on team? We've actually got 12 on team at the moment, but that's because we've got we've got 65 families, and yeah, got a lot of people to host, but it works really well, partly because we've got the space and we've got teams. So we're not just coping with doing all the actual jobs of the morning, like making the coffee, guarding the door, doing the reception desk. We've actually got people to mingle around and spend time and chatting with people. So that works really well. And I'll give you a little example of a thought for the day, because I think that's a bit of something, when we first started, I remember feeling like that's what God wanted me to do. But then I was thinking, oh my goodness, what on earth, what do we do for the thought for the day? There's masses of material out there for Christians, loads of material, and there's lots of material that's not Christian, like, breathe in and get your energy from the trees or whatever. But there's not anything that's bite-sized and accessible to non-Christians, but is something of God. So that took quite a lot of thinking, but we've actually got lots of material now, which is what we've put into a book. So if you were interested in doing it, there's 33 thoughts for the day in the book that's going to be published in a few weeks, and you could just use that straight from there. But what we try to do now is we try to show a video clip, like a YouTube clip, but that obviously is only possible because we've got the equipment in our church, but at the beginning we didn't have that, we didn't use that part of the building, and we didn't do a clip. But it works really well now because the children, so we show, let me give you an example, like Finding Nemo. I think we've all seen that, when Nemo is trapped in the aquarium in the dentist's office, and he's really depressed, he's really fed up, he just wants to die, he's had enough. And then the albatross arrives at the window and says, but Nemo, your dad has been searching for you. He's fought sharks, he's swum all this way. And then Nemo, as he realizes how much his dad loves him, his whole demeanor changes. And although he's still trapped in that fish tank, he just has a whole different way of coping, and he knows he's loved. So we'll show that clip, which is like a minute long or something. So the children are all staring at the clip and quiet, and then from that I would say something like, and that's what, as Christians, or as us as adults here, we have all sorts of really difficult things in our lives that we have to cope with, and it can feel very overwhelming. But actually knowing that we have a God in heaven, God is our Heavenly Father, and knowing that He loves us makes a real difference to me, how I cope with the difficult things. It doesn't take away the difficult things, but I know that I'm loved and I know that He's with me. And that, so it'd just be something short like that, and it's all over within 5 minutes. But it works really well. People completely tune in, and we also every week we have a verse from the Bible that we put up on the screen. We print off in a nice way and put it on the cafe tables. Some people take them home, some people don't. But those that take it home say that they really get something from it when they read it during the week. I mean, they don't understand why, but they say, oh, when I reread that, it does something to me on the inside. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, you know, that's God for you. But I might not say that out loud, but I think that. So yeah, we found it as it's a tweak toddler group. So you've got the families wanting to come in to be part of what you're doing. You know, they've got that time because they're either on maternity leave or they're between jobs or whatever, they're at home. So they're wanting connection, they're wanting something to do. And it's also, I think, a season where people are exhausted, where people are thinking, oh my goodness, what is my purpose in life? What's my identity? They're quite isolated often or lonely, they might be depressed. So I think, you know, we've got them wanting to come in, and actually if we can also help them to meet God as an adult in that season they're in, I think why don't we, you know, why not? And actually if we're all doing toddler groups and we're also, you know, brilliant at it and they all want to come, doing a little tweak and having something that is for the adults, we found works really well. I'm sorry, I've probably been talking far too long. I haven't been looking at my watch, but I've got a video of like a 2-minute long video that is tells you a bit about Refresh, but so it might be easier because then you can see it, what it looks like. So I thought I'd show you that, and then any questions after that. So am I able to share screen? Oh yeah, I am. So I'll just share sound as well. Can you all see that? Can you see? Oh no,
not at the moment, Caroline, no. Oh, there we go.
Can you now? Okay, so I'll press play. It starts really quickly, so I wanted them to add like a screenshot at the beginning, but I haven't done that yet. So here we go.
Hello, this is Refresh, and our vision for Refresh is that we nurture the adults and that they would be refreshed physically, emotionally and spiritually.
Hi, I'm Helen, and I used to come to Refresh from when my kids were very little, and 10 years on since I joined team, I'm still here because it's such a wonderful place to meet people and to journey together. And we've had the opportunity here to really pray with some people who, even though they don't know God, we've seen miraculous answers to prayer. And it's been such a journey of inspiration.
I first came to Refresh when I was a new mum. I had my daughter Violet, who was only a few months old, and my first experience of Refresh was wonderful. It was just a lovely place to come in with my daughter, sit down, and as well as the coffee and the croissants, it was a great place to make connections. I started to talk to the team, to other mums and dads and carers there, and just made a wonderful friendship with a number of people there. And it was actually through Refresh that I started to come to church, and I came more regularly, and my parents came to church. And now we are close to God and full-on Christians, all thanks to Refresh.
Most of the families that come along don't know anything about God, but we have a short thought for the day where we share something of God's love for them in an accessible and relevant way. And everyone joins in and they really enjoy it.
Ooh. So that's the sort of summary bit of it. I hope that helped you see it a bit more fully rather than just my words. And as you saw there, we do singing at the end for the children, which everybody loves. I mean, that's mostly nursery rhymes, but our final song, we do the Nick and Becky Drake song, The Big Family of God. And that's a fantastic one that they all join in with. So yeah, so that is Refresh. Any questions or any, have I said too much or not enough?
Not at all, Caroline. So much. What I think we're going to do, if it's all right with you, Caroline, and with everyone, is give a moment in breakout rooms for people to digest what you've shared, what Becky shared. Thank you to you both so much for pouring out of your experience, your top tips, ideas. There's loads there. I've been scribbling loads down myself. Folks, what we'll do then is drop you back into breakout rooms, if that's okay. Would love you simply just to share what's connected, what resonates, what inspires you, what challenges, what maybe the one or two things that you've taken from what both Becky and Caroline have shared. And if you want to put any questions, we will come back together, and then we've got about 5 to 10 minutes with Caroline and with Becky and with Sammy as well to just ask any questions that you might have burning on the top of your head. So stick your questions in the chat. Well, let's go into breakout rooms now, and then we'll come back together and quiz them further, if that's okay. So thanks again, Caroline, for sharing that. We'll see you all in a few minutes. Well, welcome back, and hopefully you had a great conversation there. Emotions were running high in our group, talking about whether that was how we feel about edging into the end of term, how we see our parents reflecting on the end of term, or maybe transitions to come, and sort of looking back and looking forwards, but also with the children and their engagement as well. So loads of levels of conversation, hopefully, as you reflected on what Becky shared, but also what Caroline shared about Refresh. There's lots in the forefront of your mind. We've got about the next sort of 8 or 10 minutes or so, and I'd love to welcome back our wonderful panel of guests for us to fire some quick fire questions at them. So we've got the wonderful Becky, we will also have Caroline, and then really thrilled to also have Sammy with us as well. So hopefully, as all 4 of us, we can jump into some fairly quick fire Q&A, ladies, if that's all right, because there's loads that's brimming up in people's minds as to this kind of finishing well, starting strong, looking at everything in between. So I will try and pick up on some of the questions that are in the chat, although I think my earlier chat has been wiped. So, but I've got loads to ask you anyway, but keep them coming if you want to drop questions in the chat whilst we're finishing. Firstly, just say huge thanks, Becky and Caroline, for what you've shared. Utter minds of resource and knowledge and experience. And Sammy, as we know, you have lived a life very invested in toddler groups and having children yourself as well. So where did we start? I would love to start with a few nuggets that have come up really around kind of team, looking at some of the contact at the end of term, looking at summer, and then going to the term ahead. So Becky, I think you said, how do you get to the end of term without your team not fizzling out? I think that's really probably paramount for many of us, isn't it? Team, as we all are, we feel like that exhausted hippo. We said that in our group. I'm sure a lot of people resonate with that picture. 1 or 2 top tips. How do you keep your team on track, focused, sticking strong to the end? What would you suggest? How do you rally them, keep them going?
Firstly, I think you need to encourage your team to, your culture needs to be that your team grasps the vision for what you're doing. If you're just, I just help at toddler group, I just put the chairs out, I just, you're not grasping that actually you're a vital part of this. So endlessly encouraging them with you know, seeing what God's doing and what God's at work and how they're a part of that is really, really important. With that, be realistic about your expectations on them for the time that you're expecting them to give. It's okay if they need a break. We took a week off last week because half of our team were caught up with the school sports day. That would have left half of us who were already tired doing it all. And we said, no, let's just take a week off. It's okay. We can come back. We can carry on. So keeping those 2 things together in balance, I think, are really, really important.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks. Caroline, I wonder if I can come to you in that sense to think about the team as well. You talked about creating the culture, both in team and in the wider Refresh Cafe and so on. What do you think, what one or two things would you say in terms of creating a culture of team against some of that, the realistic expectations and so on? You know, again, as we sort of finish well, but also even looking ahead to next term, what are the one or two things that are really important in terms of team culture, would you say, from your experience?
Yeah, thank you. I think, well, a bit like Becky said, actually, it's making sure people understand the vision, and actually they usually want to be on team because they've heard the vision, they've heard some inspiring stories and testimonies. So I think if they've got that, and then to stay on team or be part of team, we always pray together every week before our session starts when we finish setting up, and I really try to guard that time. It might only be 15 minutes, but that's a real together time. And I think then teams say they feel like that's like a mini home group or life group. I mean, it isn't, because it's 15 minutes, but to them it's they feel like they belong in the team, they've got an identity as part of the team, and it gives them that community and connection. So I think that's really good. And then I try to keep in touch with them. It's, you know, we're a big team, so it's not possible to meet all of them every week, but I'll message them all, WhatsApp them, make sure, follow up with them if there's things that they're struggling with in their lives, and keep thanking them, you know, and saying it's so brilliant, I couldn't do this without you, and you know, it's wonderful having you as a team, and encouraging them, I think. And as Becky said, actually, if they need a week off, let them have a week off, or if they need to leave early one week, or, you know, to sort of make sure they're not getting burnt out. And I think if possible, giving them the jobs to do that they like the most. So like you saw on the video, some of our older ladies love hosting the kitchen because they chat with each other, but also they love to chat to people, but they can't, you know, they might trip over children or whatever. So they're safer in the kitchen in a way, but they love that. They absolutely love doing that role. And sometimes I'll bring them out to do other things and they're fine with that. But it's, if you can find a role that really suits that team person, then they can thrive in it, and they take ownership of it too, and feel like, oh, yeah, this is my purpose, I'm needed here.
Yeah, and it's powerful for that, isn't it? People so, you know, as a team as well, not just those that we're trying to reach, in a sense, there's that sense of belonging, and that is really powerful, isn't it, to be part of something. Sammy, I wonder, just in light of that, we so often find in our toddler group teams, or again across children's youth ministry, the team can be, as you said, Caroline, there may need to be a lot of grace at this time of year when people are tireder, and there needs to be that flexibility, but also leaning into people's roles. Just thinking a bit bigger picture of toddler groups run out of a church context, it can sometimes feel quite isolated, can't it, to the rest of the church? We've shared lots of good news stories. We know those stories. What would your advice be to people who say, actually, how do we alert, if you like, or inform the rest of the church community of all of the good stuff that's happened over the course of our year? And have you had any experience of how do we kind of profile some of that stuff? How do we get the church leader maybe even more on board? What might be a couple of tips that you might have to sort of integrate some of that knowledge maybe of what's happened during our year with the wider church, so that they could support, champion, pray for, and maybe even fund some of these booklets or gifts that we might want to give to some of our leavers, the graduation ceremonies and so on? Any thoughts from your experiences?
So from very little things like putting good news stories in a notice sheet or on a website, whenever I was recruiting team, when you work with volunteers, you're always recruiting. So I guess I would vision cast at the front, and it would be a story that would inspire and would be that hook. Sometimes it's about leaving evidence around. So quite often we would move into church to do some of the bigger games or the craft activities, or for sort of special marker services. And we would leave kind of our craft and our activities around. Some of the special things we did, we would open up to the church. So I would intentionally at least every term go into the church for Christmas, Easter, harvest, the end of term. And we'd invite the wider church to be part of that, so that we've got family, welcoming family. But I guess for me, I mean, I did it over 12 years. And when I started in 2009, we had 60 children on a Sunday between 0 to 11. And by 2016, we'd got 120. And that was because of the toddler group. So it's because I was very strategic and very intentional around that toddler group and what I signposted. So people began to see it in the church building. I did a special family carol praise in about 2013. And it was lots of the new families that I said, would you like to choose a carol and just share a bit of your story, why you've chosen it? And that was the point at which some of the skeptics in the church were kind of like, oh, I see it now. It's kind of taken 3 years, but I see the people. These people were not in the building 3 years ago. So take the space in news sheets and at the front in airtime, have a supportive leader, leave evidence around, you know, pictures and things on walls of what you're doing. But actually, if you are intentional with your signposting, then actually people will be able to see the evidence in the end. And it's then introducing those new families into the church and giving them a voice.
Amazing. Yeah. So what you said there, it takes time, doesn't it? But the intentionality of, you know, making it obvious, using the newsletters, leaving stuff around so people can't avoid basically what's going on in the toddler group world. Yeah, and we want people to prick their ears up, don't we, and be really encouraged by what's going on. Thank you. That's really helpful, looking at kind of the church context, how we get that buy-in, level of support, and so on. I know sometimes we can feel a bit out on it. So to be embedding that into the network, the heart of the church, really important, isn't it? Caroline, I loved your Nemo experience of just those kind of intentional nuggets of, you know, culturally relevant things that we can throw into the mix in our toddler group or cafe context for people to grab hold of. It made me kind of feel emotional at that example that you gave. My question would be, as we're being intentional, as we're using relevant things to have that distinctively Christian input into our toddler groups, because that's where the transformation comes, doesn't it? That 55% of adults who said that their own faith has been challenged or changed. My question would be, if or where you're discerning as a team to see where emotion does come to the fore, which we may well see over the next few weeks, haven't we, with, you know, children moving on and so on, how do you cope with that? What's appropriate? Do we get alongside, offer prayer, as you mentioned, in the context? Do we encourage that? What if people are really emotional? What's the right level that we can strike, particularly over these next few weeks where emotions might be raw? How do you equip or encourage your team to grapple with that?
Yeah, I mean, the team, most of the team have had children, not all of them actually, but I think it's just about getting alongside people, sitting with them. Some people just want to talk and get all that emotion out. Some people might actually need more than that, and they might need some counselling, in which case we're not trained counsellors, and we can signpost them, or we can offer to spend a bit longer talking with them, but we do always offer to pray with them. And I don't think we've ever had somebody say no. So on what we will say is, well, actually, can I ask, do you mind if I also tell the team that, you're worried about this at the moment, and then that they'll also pray. And they usually say yes, and then I'll make sure all the team know, and then we pray together for that person. And we have seen, like Helen said on the video, we have seen some amazing answers to prayer on things actually where we think, oh my goodness, that's a biggie, is God going to do something about that? But he always does, doesn't he? So but the emotions of moving on, I think it's reassuring people that we're still here as well, and that they're welcome to come back and visit, or please stay connected, things like that. So and just allowing them to talk and reassuring them that those emotions are normal and hard while they're in it, but they are normal as well.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to draw some of our conversations to a close, although we could chat and ask you lots of questions, I know. Please do, if you've got any follow-up questions that we haven't had time to answer, do ping them over to Sammy and myself. But just say, thank you, Becky. Thanks, Caroline. That intentionality, the safe, trusted environment, the offering prayer, the recognising, as we saw in the stats earlier, 1 in 3 people tell us that across the UK they are open to a deeper level of conversation with a practicing Christian that they know. So in these places and spaces, let's make ourselves known, be open to that, look ahead to be intentional in the new term as well, and over the summer still allowing those lifelines to continue, because we know it's powerful. So thank you again, Becky and Caroline, and we hope to pick up on some of the bits from the chat as well and send them to you on email as we move from here. Please don't go anywhere. If you're able to stay with us just for 3 more minutes, we would love to, just as we look at finishing well and starting strong, Sammy and I have just got a few resources and tidbits to share with you, which we hope might equip you again into the summer and beyond. So Sammy, should we come to you first?
I think you might be first on the slides. Let's see what the slides are that Anna brings up.
Okay, let's go for it. So very swiftly, if you can move us on then, Anna, just a little reminder of all of the good news stuff that is in the Talking Jesus research, and there's the website for you. Next slide, please, Anna. If you as a team, as a toddler group team, as a small group in your church want to journey through and grapple with, actually, what does some of these stats and the big picture findings mean for me? There's a brilliant personal workbook, which looks like this. The next slide, please, Anna, on the inside. Lots of room for you to journal, ask questions, chat with others, and again, bring through that distinctively Christian input into your groups. Next slide, please, Anna. There's also an evangelism health check, which is for the local church to actually enable your whole church to see where we're at in terms of faith sharing and confidence and evangelism. This may be for you, for your church leaders, to just map the landscape, see where you are and see where you want to go to. So that gives you the website there. It looks like this, really easy, 5 questions, can be used in a church service as a benchmarking tool, but hopefully would encourage your church. Next slide, please. Again, we'd love to equip the local church in terms of the Talking Jesus research. We've got a series of 10 brilliant podcasts. I've been listening to them over the last few weeks as they've been launched. 10 brilliant speakers picking up on some of the main big headlines from the research. We'd love to equip you on Spotify, wherever you download any podcasts, and this is well worth a listen to as well. And just lastly, which might be of interest to you, if you're a parent yourself, or you work in a school context, we've launched a new resource called Time to Talk, which looks at giving, as you can see here, practical advice, looking at relationships and sex education, both in terms of how we talk to our own children, but also what's on their school curriculum. If you can go to the next slide and last slide from me, Anna, please. On Monday, the 25th of September, our friend Ed Drew, who's a friend to the Talking Toddlers network as well, he'll be speaking on this, talking about our bodies, looking at harassment, control, consent, and body image. So I'd love to invite you to join that. Sign up for free, a webinar on Monday, the 25th of September, to just help us as parents as well, or in the school context or in children's ministry, to be looking at how we engage with some of these big topics, both in our family life and having confidence to grapple with the topics, but also looking at the school context. So it's free. Please come and join me and the team for that 25th September. Sammy, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. So just while we've got you for another 2 minutes, just to say that our next webinar in September on the 28th, which will also be on Zoom, and a link will come out to you, that's on reaching and keeping volunteers. Now, you have demonstrated this morning that you are our best resource. So if you have any top tips on reaching and keeping volunteers, put them in the chat, because we will be in touch. I'll be in touch for a chat, because you might find that that you've got a spotlight at Talking Toddlers on that date in September the 28th. Just a few resources from Hope to share with you. Again, there's no pressure. Take what works for you, what serves you in your context, and ignore the rest. So the first one, Anna, if we can have our next slide. Some of you will know about our God's Big Story series of resources. They are storybooks. Each one is a particular story, but it points to the bigger story of the Bible. So we've had Jesus Fixes Things, which was Easter, Jesus to the Rescue, which is Christmas, Uh-oh, It's Broken was creation, and God Washes the World was Noah. Coming soon, I'm hoping it will go to the printers next week, is Happy Ever After, which really is heaven for 2-year-olds. The book will be out, the other resources, the animation and the song and the all-age activity will follow soon. Linked with that, we have some Bible Buds resources for toddler groups. Anna runs Bible Buds. Anna, do you want to chip in and say anything about Bible Buds? Might be a useful resource for toddler groups thinking about next term.
Yeah, just real quick, the Bible Buds is a missional toddler group resource that covers, I've got a copy here that covers the whole year, and lots of ideas, crafts, Bible stories, loads of fun things, including things to do at home with families as well. And because I love Talking Toddlers, there's a 15% discount code for all of you guys. So if you want to go over to biblebuds.co.uk and put in Talk Tots, you'll get a 15% discount code. And if you buy one of the books or buy the whole year's resource, you can get, don't know if you can see, but We've got some free story for you to put any of your story props in. So yeah, you'll get one of those free if you buy Bible Buds book. So there you go, that's Bible Buds.
Thank you, Anna. Right, just a couple more things that you might be interested in. I'm going, Anna's going. Are you going to the Playtime Conference in September? We're going to be sharing a lot about story and the legacy of story, but the early bird sign up finishes soon. I think it might be the 22nd of July. So sign up for that soon. We'd love to see you in Milton Keynes in September. Do look out for Becky's Grove booklet. It's coming soon. Start at the beginning, like really, really soon. We just don't have a front cover to show you, but look out for that. Caroline's book, Refresh, is out literally in the next couple of weeks and has got lots of resources and might answer some of the questions if this morning has left you with any questions. We've also got Hope Publish a magazine. This at the moment is free. So if you want to order any, they're on the Hope Together shop. It's a magazine that uses celebrity and topical features and articles to just gently begin to ask questions of faith. So in this one, we've got Bear Grylls, we've got Deborah James, we've got opera singer Catherine. I've forgotten her surname because I'm trying to think too quickly, but they are free. You just need to pay postage. They're ideal for kind of giving out to parents at the end of term or on any picnics or anything like that. So, as I said, our next webinar is at the end of is in September 28th. It's on reaching and keeping volunteers. If you can put anything in the chat that is a top tip that works for you, that will really help us as we plan to kind of land the session and plan the session in a way that's most helpful to you. We will put a link, a sign up link to anyone who has signed up for this webinar. We'll be sending that out to you with the recording and with all the resources. Remember that having signed up for this webinar, we can send you information about the next one and the resources from this one, but to receive regular updates from us, we don't bombard you every week, don't worry, but to just be on our mailing list and always receive the invites to Talking Toddlers, you do need to sign up to our mailing list. And hopefully Anna is going to put that in the chat now so that you can find it. If not, we'll put the sign up to the mailing list in the email, which has this recording and all our resources. So we have landed only 5 minutes over time, but thank you. I'm just going to pray as we go. So Father God, thank you for these inspirational people who've been part of our toddler group this morning and who I know represent just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more people out there serving your church, growing your kingdom through work with you, young families and toddler groups. So we just pray that you will be with us as we go. Father, there's been lots to take in. With the things that are of you kind of bubble to the top, we've had bubbles this morning, and the things that are not of you, would they just melt away? Father, we pray that you would continue to resource, equip, inspire and refresh us, that you would continue to prepare good things for us to step into as we seek to build your kingdom with our very youngest families on earth as it is in heaven. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Anna, superstar that she is, has put the sign up form in our chat. It's there. So the sign up for Playtime is there. If you don't want to miss the early bird offer, we would love to see you there. We'll be there with all our Happy Land books, including the new one. The sign up link is there as well. If you want to make sure that you're on our mailing list and you always hear, you're thanking us, we need to thank you. Okay, it would not be the same without you. You're brilliant. What you put in the chat is so inspiring. You resource, inspire and equip each other. And we're just here to serve you and facilitate that really. So do have a really good end to the term. End well, start strong, and we'll see you in September. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless. Thanks for joining us.